welcome to episode 2 of Shooting the Shift. I'm Bam, that's Matt.
Yep.
That's Bryn. And Ryan.
Hello.
And on this week's episode, we're going to talk about the car that we all got together over.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not even going there.
It's not... No dogging jokes, yeah, Milton? Alright?
No, not this time.
Okay.
No, we didn't need it this time.
We didn't need
Sorry,
it.
Bryn.
Right, perfect. So, the Eunos, the Miata, the MX5, the Mazda Roadster, the greatest entry-level sports car you can spend money on.
Hands down the best.
So, everybody here's got one. We've all done different things with engines. Between us, we've had naturally aspirated, turboed, supercharged. Has anyone put nitrous in yet?
No.
That's
No.
on my to-do list.
Or hydrogen.
No.
Meth? Anybody done meth?
No.
I mean, I
Not
love
in,
that.
not in an MX5.
Not in an
So-
MX5. He has sat in the RX-7 shell and done meth though.
There's
It's
a-
got nothing else to do with it.
So who got their MX-5 first? Because you guys all had MX-5s when I met you.
I bought
Um,
mine in 2013, 2014.
I think I was 12 or 13. It might have been late 12.
Mine was Christmas 2013. And Matt already had his when I met him.
Yeah, you had all of you had yours when we first met. Let me see.
Yeah. When I met you was pretty much the first month I owned it because I bought the car and then the first thing I did was went to an auto solo and then met these guys.
And that's the same year I first had mine. I'm just looking for an old photo to see if it's dated.
Did we meet at an auto solo or on a stand?
I think we'll have met on a stand most probably. Well,
More
actually,
than likely.
I met you at Jackfest when someone went, "Have you met Bam?" I was like, "Who's Bam?" He went, "That guy with the giant fur coat on."
Yes, I remember that. I remember that partying that took place.
Yeah, so that would have been an MX5 nuts or combustion punk stand, probably.
More than likely. Probably
Very
not.
bad.
That's probably
I
where
think-
I met you as well, Ben.
That's probably
same.
where you all met me, and probably why I don't remember it, because I had my party coat on.
I remember the first time I met Milton because I was having problems at a drift day.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing about MX5s.
Yes.
Like, something goes wrong with the car, whatever it is, and people help.
It was your slave sender, right?
Yep. I think it was either my first or second day. I'd run over a cone, and for whatever reason, there was only one bolt holding my slave cylinder on. And at this point, I'm still fairly new to modifying cars in general. I asked Bryn. Bryn says, "Go and ask Milton. He'll know." I'll go and find Milton. Like, first time we've ever met. Can you help me fix my car?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, and here we are.
You were the expert.
The slave sender bit fell out, the little nipple, didn't it? The leg. It was the main bit.
No, that was all still there. It twisted, so it wasn't holding pressure.
That's the one, yeah. So every time
So
you
we
push the clutch,
pinched-
it was going... "Bleh."
Yeah, so we ended up pinching a bolt out of the radiator, one of the radiator bolts, because that was the same thread. Put that in, bled it up, cable tied the radiator back on, and carried on.
What colour car did I have at that time?
You had the MX5. It
Yeah,
was
but
matte
we-
black.
A
Oh,
Panda car.
Yeah, I don't
Did it
think
have the Panda on?
I don't think
Might
we
have done.
no, I didn't have the Panda on back then, but I don't think we ever saw your car when it wasn't black.
Yeah, I
did
never
you never
did.
see the black and purple one?
No.
Oh, maybe then if it was purple but still black.
Yeah, it was
Hmm.
it was disgustingly loud. NA 1.6.
No, I don't think I saw that.
Milton, you say that like disgustingly loud NA MX5s are a bad thing.
It is if
No,
it's straight piped.
It was
I-
a huge Jap can on it, and it was just.
I
It sounded like
mean,
he's doing 1,000 miles an hour, but he was actually doing 6.
but Matt, what you've got to remember about mine is it's 94 import, which means it's legally decatted.
Yeah,
So
that's
it is.
fine. No, I'm not saying decats are a bad thing. I'm saying all straight piped MX5s sound like 8s.
Yeah. There's two things at a drift day that you don't want to hear, and when you hear them, you always go, ugh, and you know exactly what you're going to see. One, straight pipe D36. Two, straight piped MX5.
And what are you
And
going to see
BMW
though? What?
They both just make the same awful noise of just so much noise, but you can tell that there's no movement happening. And you look round, and it's just sat there doing 2 miles an hour, going. That is the noise.
That's an accurate description.
That's fair. See, I've got the advantage because of the cams, because of the Tomy cams, that it just does this nice at 2 mile an hour. Mine sounds like it's about to stall. But in a good way.
Yeah.
In a really, really good way. Just that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
big lumpy cams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which duration wise, 256, 258. What are the pipers in yours?
They call them a BP285, but I think they are 266 inlet and 256 exhaust.
Interesting. Are they in the block behind you?
They are in this one behind
Do you
me,
fancy
yeah.
just getting them out so we can check?
We're working back out.
Yeah.
The cover's not held on. I could just lift that off. But I've got them all written down somewhere. But yes, they are in the turbo engine because I've worked out that it's basically the same profiles that they use for the turbo cams, just slightly different timing. So just change the timing on the gears and job's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the next things I was going to do for my car was I'd done the whole supercharger setup, and aside from putting fancier injectors or something like that, cams were the next logical upgrade.
Yeah.
And then I bought an RX-7.
Good. Cams are something that is underdone in MX5.
I think so, yeah.
And a lot of Japanese cars in general, but actually a big, big gain.
It made a massive, absolutely massive difference to just how my car felt to drive. Like, the only better change, which took a lot of work, was that Skunk 2 throttle body, and then later after they released it, the Skunk 2 inlet manifold. But even like just the throttle body with the work that Tom Van Beek did, sort of port matching that, was fucking epic.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, what were you going to say?
I've spoken to Bryn about like what to do, whether to go for just add more boost or to get more power. But what would be really good would be more RPM. But then I think Bryn, we spoke that adding RPM is dangerous, or it's easier to add more power than add RPM.
Yeah, so when you're revving an engine more, the stress on the rods goes up proportional to the square of the revs. So like 1,000 RPM more of revs is more like 2,000 RPM linearly of extra stress. So it's not a very easy way to get more power. If you've got a turbo and you can whack more boost at it, you'll probably get better gains out of that. But revs are still cool.
That's why the next bit of work on my 5 requires $5,000 worth of forged balanced parts, though.
Yeah, I think the cranks are good for it. The rods start to go a bit wobbly, from what I understand, at 8,000, and the valve gear is going to need upgrading as well.
Yeah. So it's upgraded valve. It's
the Volvo
forged rods, forged pistons, and a forged balanced crank. In theory, probably never going to push it there in practice. 9,000 RPM out of what is. Then a 2-litre Mark 1 MX5.
Well, that's the other thing you've got to think about when you're going up to higher RPMs is everything needs to be precisely balanced, or it'll just shake itself apart.
It's absolutely killer for the build. Like, the second I do that becomes the point that even on an R-Limited, I've spent more money than it's worth.
Yeah. But then you can take the engine out and it's money.
Still the same engine.
Yeah. I mean, that's my logical thing. Like, I want to take, if the body ever goes on that car, I want to take the running gear and the block and put it in something stupid. and Bryn's getting a phone call on that day.
That's the thing with the MX5 though, because we all got into the MX5 game when they were the bottom of the market.
Yeah.
My first MX5 was 500 quid.
Yeah.
I think I
paid.
was 8.
So every single one of us has spent more on our MX5 than we're ever going to see back for it.
Except
Now
for
on
me.
that, depends who asks. If you're asking, I'll tell you how much. If the wife asks, it's like divided by 3.
No, Matt, because the reality is I picked up the R Limited for 500 quid, and I was when it came back from its repair. I was offered
repair.
Yeah, the repair that was a repair that the guy didn't repair it.
Yeah, that one.
That one. I was offered $8,000 for it.
8.
8 for
The
the
R
R Limited.
Limited's always held the value though.
Because there's only 700 of them made.
Why didn't you? Why didn't you
Because-
take it and then get another one that's not R Limited? And
Because I've got I love that car. It's like that car. That car for me has quite a sentimental attachment because that's the second car and the first performance car I ever worked on after the head injury, and I'd had to relearn everything. So like I had the Punto that I kind of relearned cosmetics on, and and I know, Brian, I managed to kill 3 gearboxes in 12 months by just driving it that damn hard. But I did
in an NA car.
Yeah, I did also manage to squeeze the interior of an Alpha 147 into it.
Good effort.
I could, so I did, right? And then I got rid of that, and I got the MX5 and drove that a lot less. And then I got rid of that, and I got the Lexus that you guys will definitely remember for its curtains.
I remember that.
Yeah. And smuggling people into shows when they'd been kicked out.
I think the other thing you love about that MX5 is when you go to Owners Club meets and they turn their nose up at you because you've modified an R Limited.
Oh, they hate it. They hate it.
I find it really funny. Yeah, when I went to the 25th anniversary in my what can only be described as destroyed supercharged car, drifting everywhere through their auto solo layout that we're giving passenger rights to with Buffy Racing, they loved it. All of them, absolutely everyone loved it.
That's because
that's
they were
fine.
like, hey, he's destroying another one of those bloody BRGs.
It's funny you should bring up colour though, Britton, because I've had 10 plus MX5s, and only about 3 of them haven't been green. But I've never gone out to buy a specific colour. I've always just ended up with green, and I don't know why. It's just the way it is. Because my first one was green, my replacement was green, the rust-free shell I bought was green, my supercharged donor car was green.
Green. Oh, it was green, guys.
Yeah, it's like I had one Mark II red one, a Mariner blue donor car that I broke to parts after our mate crashed it.
That's the engine out.
That's the engine from that one. And Nicole's new one used to be Mariner blue, but is flip paint.
See, Mariner blue is a good colour. Satellite blue is my favourite colour. And if I was going to buy an MX5 just for investment, future value, a chased white R Limited.
I'm not a fan of white cars in general.
Is it any surprise, given the colour of the rest of my fleet, that
No,
I like the
not
chased
at all.
white
Only
R
matching.
Limited?
If we're
older
talking colour,
on older cars, white is good, but new cars, it just shows that they couldn't afford to pay for the extra habit painted.
the extra colour. We saw him at a auto solo again. It came on the standard little Enki 7-spoke wheels, the 6.5J.
Yeah.
With, to fill the arches, 60mm spacers.
It was bad. It was one of those where you look and you can see the other end of the arch through the tyre gap because the wheel's that far away from everything.
Wow.
And the first thing I said to him was, leave the arches, that's fine, I don't have an issue with them. Throw the spacers away, and it will handle much better.
Throw the wheels in the bin.
See,
He's got wide
a
wheels on it
history
now,
of-
so-
I've got a history of running like 6.5 sevens on my MX5s until the 949 racings happened. I'm sorry, Brent. You're
depends.
shaking your head. The works NR4s are only 6.5s.
That's because, despite the fact that everybody goes crazy for JDM rims, you can only get them in the shittest fitments on little cars. So
Yes.
I don't care that your wheels came from Yahoo auctions in Japan. They look like ass, and a rotor that you can buy in a nice wide width looks way better.
Mine didn't. Mine came from a certain Scottish man that everybody knows has the finest hoard of rare MX5 parts in the land.
What you're saying is
Several bits of my R Limited that I didn't want anymore have ended up in that collection.
so what you're basically saying is you haven't run a 195 5015 on an 8J 15-inch wheel ET0 like literally every other MX5 in the country.
I cannot remember what spec of tyre is on the 949s. It's been that long since I've driven the car.
They're in your unit, aren't they?
They are in my
Mine are
unit.
8.25. I'm Team XXR.
Yeah, the only people who make them in 8.25, just to be a little bit more special.
At least you know the
But-
genuine XXRs.
Exactly, and they're cheap, they look good, and they're pretty strong. I haven't broken one in never.
The works,
I broke
the
a-
works
I broke
did
a road-
not crack when I bent the rim on a curb.
I correct a rotor on a wall at Rockingham.
Yeah,
Ooh.
you did clutch kick it into the wall though, Matt.
I did, and then bailed out of it at the last second.
I'm going to make this crash memorable now.
Yeah, well, I've got a video of it, so I'll get Bam to put it in the description of this video. And somebody you can all watch it.
The link's in the description of Matt's silly crash.
It's not the only crash I've had in an MX5.
You've had a few, yeah.
I
I've only had two.
I think I've only had one, and that was
No, three.
yeah. I went
Where-
roundabout when I just got the car, and I was like, you know what? I can't find a place to do some subtle street-o. This roundabout right here, this is the one. That roundabout wasn't the one. I went straight off the exit, up the curb, and smashed a rim, and had to drive home on 3 tires. Because I was like, I can't leave it here.
I've had one crash where I wasn't in the car and someone in a car park must have street-o'd into my door. It's the only way. Like the gap to drive a car through was probably 3 times the width of the office, and then there was my car. So there's no way you hit that unless you're driving like an idiot. And then the only other time I had like a proper, I've messed my car up a little bit, not a little niggle, like that time I split the front lip in half, was when I fully hit a curb and bent the NR4s that now live on the spike after having been straightened, but aren't going near a performance car ever again.
I managed to crash my first one on Christmas Eve, the black and purple one. I thought, I can do skids, I can do street-o, and third gear clutch kicked, held it, and then I was like, yeah, I shouldn't be doing this. This is really naughty. I'll get in lots of trouble. So I'm going to stop drifting. I gathered it up and then panicked. And I don't have ABS back then. I still don't. So, yeah, into a signpost.
I think the moral of that story is don't do street-o.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
street-o's bad.
story is, as cool as you think street-o is, you're probably quite bad at it.
So
But not now.
when I
think
say when I bought my first MX5, I was like, well, this is my first rear-wheel drive car. I don't know how this is going to handle over the limit if I ever get it over the limit. And Loughborough Car Club were doing auto solos locals. Like, well, that's like, what was it, 20 quid a time, I think?
It was
Like,
15 back then.
15, there you go. So look, perfect. I'll go and do that. I'll see how the car handles on the limit, and I'll learn to drive it properly. And that's how I met Bryn for a start. But I've never had a crash in an MX5 on the road.
I think my biggest crash ever was when I wrote the Mini off.
They still repaired that though.
That no.
No, did they not?
They repaired the sideways into a tree incident. That was a few days after I got it back from the engine work, because I was young, I was an idiot. I had the world's biggest pair of testicles, but no common sense at all. And just lost it on a corner and hit a tree sideways at like 50. And like middle of the pillar. And the insurance company basically turned around and said, because the engine's worth so much, we're going to fix it. And the next year, my premium was horrific.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've not had a crash. I've not had a crash on the road since that.
Yeah.
I had a second crash in the Mini where someone hit me head on in an Audi in a 30. I was doing under 30. Don't know how quick they were going, but they hit me hard enough to bounce the car back into the curb, and I snapped the rear axle on the rear passenger side, and the front, I snapped the front driver's side, and just oil pan into concrete.
That's why I have an MX5, because you never have to pay for a premium again. Because if you get in a crash like that, you die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But do you know what? You learn in an MX5 when you're about to be in a crash like that, you somehow drive gloriously and avoid it because you know it's instant death. It's like when I was driving the hijet. You don't crash a hijet because if you crash a hijet, you lose your knees.
Yeah, you are the crumple zone.
So right. So I've only got experience of driving an NA MX5, right? And I swear by it. I'm convinced it's the best way to go for the engine. I know everybody pretty much on the internet is currently screaming at me that I'm wrong, but they're all wrong and I'm right.
I don't know if they are anymore. Because in the last year and a half, 2 years, NA has become cool again, and now everybody seems to be going for cammed and ITB builds, and turbos aren't cool again anymore.
Bryn, don't get me started on the gas dynamics of ITBs and why it's wrong. It's just purely from a scientific point of view, you're increasing the surface area of the intake. Yeah? You're not going to have a perfectly smooth pipe no matter what you do. So you're increasing the turbulence in the air, and therefore you've got less dense air going into the engine. That is science, Bryn. That is coming from the bit of the chemical engineering degree that made me quit chemical engineering. It was that boring. And it's the only practical thing that I still know from that degree. But laminar gas flow in a pipe dictates that you've got less dense air going in through ITBs than you do through a single wider throttle body. Which is why I went down single wider throttle body route.
Single wider throttle body is definitely good. Yeah.
But throttle bodies go blab everywhere, so...
The thing is, for this argument, you're probably talking to...
everywhere, Milton. More efficient.
I think for this argument, you're talking to three of the best people for it in an MX5 anyway, because mine was supercharged, Milton was turbo, and Bryn was ITBs, and we've all driven each other's cars.
Yeah.
Yes.
Driven it.
And I crashed it.
Remember it.
Remember at Pod, I thought I can do this. Backwards entry into the hairpin.
And no, I think it was NA when you did that, because I was in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
No, it was supercharged because I was struggling. That was when you'd done the manual steering rack.
Yeah, I think that's why Bryn never drove mine, because it had a depowered power steering rack, so it was really
just
heavy.
Paid to drive.
Yeah, so heavy. And even Milton's was because his is manual, factory manual, and it was heavy. The car knew where it wanted to go, and it was very drivable, but the steering was heavy. But if you hit a bump, I had no option but to do whatever the steering wanted to do over the bump. That
And
was
that
too much for me.
that was the problem with mine. Mine was twice as heavy as that, so it hit a bump and it ripped the steering wheel out of your hand. If I'd kept the car, I'd have gone back to power steering, I think.
But I think the factory manual rack was good. If I was stronger, that would have been perfect. Depowered, definitely.
No,
I'm not exactly
I wouldn't
the
recommend
strongest
depowered.
No, but I think you've probably got used to it, Milton, and how heavy it is. Whereas because I've got used to mine with the power steering, it's good power steering. It doesn't feel numb like some cars I've driven.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got the control to put it where I want it, no matter what the terrain underneath wants the car to do.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the thing,
I am, shall we say, heftier than Bryn. Right, and I wouldn't take the power steering out of mine, and I don't use it. I don't use mine for sideways. Like, so I have a slightly more legitimate reason to depower steer it, because I need slightly. I just need to be precise about where I'm putting it, and I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't.
If I could, I would probably go power steering just because it's easier. But when I was first drifting, I'd go in someone else's car that's got power steering, and it felt like I didn't know what the hell the front was doing.
I think that was.
You let go and it will spin, and you know what it's going to do. And other cars, you're like, are you going to?
I think that was more. I think that was more a setup issue than an actual power steering issue, because I've driven. So obviously, I'm not going to name it, but I used to work for a drift school, and they had Mark II MX5s, and they had manuals, and they had power steerings, and there was 6 of them, and every single one of them drove different, no matter what steering setup they had, because they weren't aligned properly. So
they were, but not the same specs.
One day the manual would drive the best, the next day the power steering one would drive the best, and they all felt a little bit different. And you have to remember, you're talking about cars that are 20 plus years old now.
And see,
so if you're driving a car with 20-year-old ball joints, it is not going to feel sharp.
If you're getting into MX5 steering setups, upgrade your anti-roll bars, get rid of every single factory bush and replace it. Upgrade the lot, and better suspension.
Yeah, I think
better suspension.
Like I said, all your Mark 1s now are 20 years old, at least 20 to 30 years old. So unless it's been well looked after or modified like we've done with ours, it is going to have worn bushes and worn shocks and all the rest of it. So it needs looking after, either upgrading or even stock would be better at this point. But when there's so many reasonably priced polybush kits out there, it'd be pointless not to.
And that is the great.
You've got to be careful though. You have got to be careful with that, because one thing, polybushes get a reputation for being harsh, and I think the reason that is because if you buy a very cheap polybush kit and put it in, they don't spin right and they bind up. And I don't think people realise, a factory bush is a metal sleeve that's actually bonded into some rubber. They are attached together, so it's kind of like a spring. Whereas a good polybush is meant to be essentially a bearing. And you should just be able to move the arm like this freely. And cheap ones that bind up don't. The thing that really surprised me when I went to completely Super Pro on the back of mine is I thought it was going to be really harsh and crashy. And it is not. It is just as plush as the standard bushes when it's in bump, but it's stiff when you turn it. And that is amazing. So if you've got polybushes on your MX5 and it feels really, really crashy and harsh, check that they're actually moving and they're not just binding. Like, just take the shock out.
That comes to the really important thing about when you're doing any work on an MX5, and it's really easy on an MX5 to do this, is don't cheap out on your parts, because even the expensive stuff for an MX5, like if I was to buy a set of cams for the Stagia, and I bought expensive cams for the MX5 at $1,000, but if I was to buy cams for the Stagia, like, they're not even in the same realms of money.
I think, though, this applies to not just MX5s, just life in general for the most part, is if you buy cheap, you will buy twice.
Yeah. I bought my coilovers for the green one in 2014. I sold them 2 years ago for 350 quid. and they were perfectly fine. I only sold them because I got new versions with more damping and stuff, but the same brand.
That's the other thing is if you buy expensive, or not necessarily expensive, buy good, which sometimes means more money, they hold their value.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if you break the car, you can get the money back.
The only problem I've got
700
now
quid.
is I bought my Tines so long ago that now the cheaper variant of the Tines is the same quality as what I bought.
But what you've got is you've bought a decent brand.
Yeah.
So you can go and have them refurbished.
Exactly.
And then there will be like new.
And the support I get from the guys at Tyne, I can rock up to an event, have a chat with James from Tyne, and literally go, "This is the random piece of Japanese metal I've bought this month. Do you have anything for it?" And instead of getting a no like I do from most suppliers, it's a yeah, we'll just phone Japan.
Hello, Japan. Springs, please.
Hello, Japan. We need this. The idiot's been at it again.
Overnight parts from Japan.
No, don't. Don't even look at the prices of overnight parts from Japan.
But I think the moral is buy the best you can afford. If you can't afford the best, wait a little bit longer and buy the best.
Yeah. You're usually better waiting. I mean, I found that with the communal lowering springs that we had on our MX5s for a while.
It came off my car. It came on my car and got passed around everyone in the group.
So they came on your car. They went on my car. I gave them to Alex, and they went on his car for a little bit. Then they went on, I think it was Sky's, it was a different MX5, and I think he sold them on after that. And it went with the same shocks.
If anybody out there has a set of blue Takiko OEM replacement shocks with H&R lowering springs on them, they're probably mine.
Yeah, and they've been on every MX5.
Yeah, replace them immediately because they're awful.
What was
So we've covered.
Ooh, I like that one.
What was that?
I'll take that one.
Before
Do it again.
First modification needed to your MX5, or the best first one, like the proper one, not just I did the tyre pressures.
The first one for me then, that was really, really good. Okay, so my dad is not... My parents are both into cars, but he's not a petrol head at all. He had like one cool car once, many, many years ago. And I first bought the MX-5 and I could see the sparkle in his eye of just that little bit of youth springing back in. And I bought an R-package front lip and a toe strap. Yes, I bought a toe strap. Everyone buys a toe strap first. And we had a weekend of like drilling it and fitting it and putting it on. And then I went immediately from that to Japfest 2 with my standard MX-5 with some lowering springs and a lip and a toe strap. But that was awesome, actually. So that was mine.
The first good one for me was probably the Jackson Racing intake.
Oh, everybody used to want one of them.
Yeah, they were really popular.
They were great until
that and
until
the
you
arc
sit
chamber
in your engine bay with one of those laser thermometers, and you go, "That's like the hottest part of the engine bay for my intake to be in," and you start
just
applying
above the
science.
radiator.
Not that I told anyone that when I sold the part.
No,
Why are you getting rid of this? I'm just doing a new intake setup.
Matt,
So-
what was yours?
Mine was my first MX-5 that I had for 10 months before it got to the MOT, and I was like, yeah, it's not going to pass on this rusty arches and sills. Because both of them completely gone. And this was at the time where you could throw them away and buy another one for 50p. But a welded diff was the first thing I put in it. And that was on the recommendation of Sketchy from when he was living in Loughborough. It's like he was drifting at the time. I was like, we were chatting at one of the local meets when they still happened and we were allowed outside. And I was saying, I bought it because I want to learn to drift. And he was like, put a welder in it. And I went to Junkyard Dog not a week or two later. I stood out in the cold. It must have been like October or November. I stood out in the cold for like 4 or 5 hours while he did it. Took the diff out, fitted a welded diff, and put it all back together for me. And that was the first thing I did.
Well, wasn't
And
you,
that-
but
That diff still lives. It went in that car. It came out, went in my second one. It went in my supercharged shell, and I sold it on to Sam, I think his name was. And that's now in a turboed car as well. And it still lives on 6 years later.
See, this comes into the list of things you.
Good.
This comes into the list of things you don't have to do when you buy an R Limited. It comes with the factory Torsen, so don't touch the diff. Leave it in.
My first mod, the one that worked, was changing the steering wheel. Going from the triangle in it, you do that, and it's all floppy and to a sway. I think I bought a sway deep dish, as everyone does.
That was my second.
It just instantly feels race car and cool, and yes, I've got the yellow stripe at the middle.
Yeah. So
that was the second thing I did. I bought a deep dish wheel and a D1 spec quick release thing.
Yeah.
But that D1 quick release I still have, and it's sat in my RX-7 at the moment. I still own it.
The MX5 starter kit, that though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well done, Dave. Deep dish wheel, toe strap, and some rotors or XXRs. Job done.
But
see,
the 5 is
it's always the answer.
Yeah. It is.
And that's the thing, isn't it? People sell them and they go to other cars and they come back to an MX5. And I only bought it because I couldn't afford something better. And then I got to the point where I could afford something better. And yet I'd driven a couple of things by that point. Yeah, like I've driven an S14. I've driven Chiv's S14, which was amazing.
Yeah.
It drifted itself, but it was too easy. And I've driven quite a few proper drift cars. And when you come from something like an MX5, they're almost too good at that point. And
yes,
I feel like I've had less fun driving something that's actually good now because it's just right.
I always said when I built the supercharged MX5, I will never sell this car.
Sold that one.
And two reasons. One, I wanted to get into competition drifting, and I thought I wanted a better base to start with. Something a slightly longer wheelbase. It was a little bit easier, and you could get better. Like you struggle to get a proper angle kit for an MX5.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
It takes you 111 days.
Yeah, but I wanted a better base to drift with.
Especially edited by Bryn, Milton.
Yeah, they have to be modified by Bryn.
And the other reason was the FC came up dirt cheap. I say dirt cheap. It was cheap for what it was, and it was the perfect car for what I wanted to build.
It wasn't pristine and stuff.
And I kind of knew that Nicole was going to buy an MX-5 anyway, so I'm not going to be out of an MX-5 for long. And lo and behold, she went and bought one. So I've still got access to an MX-5. I can still work on an MX-5 and still drive an MX-5. So it's not like I've lost that.
See, that's the thing, right? I would, like the Stager eats tires like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, I believe it.
I can go through a set of tires in 12 months because
that's rookie numbers.
Yeah, but think how much I actually drive the Stager as well, right?
Just daily driving.
No, okay.
Yeah, not driving like an idiot because of the height issue that we discussed last episode, actually. So I'd get rid of that, and I'd probably it's a shame it's gone, but it's gone. But the 5, it's good, fun, fast, but cheap to run. Really, I can service the car for sod all money.
100 quid or so.
Yeah. Tires are 50 quid a corner, even for decent tires.
Rain Sports or something. Perfect daily.
Nankangs are what I'm running.
Yeah.
Decent set of Nankangs are cheap. Make a phone call, get that sorted.
Just don't get me started on how cheap an MX-5 is compared to an RX-7.
Yeah, that's the thing though. You get your MX-5. You immediately go out and buy either a toe strap or aluminium toe, the bolt-on jobs, right? You buy one of them, and then the next thing you buy is coilovers or low range springs. Then you buy a set of wheels. Doesn't matter what's on it, right? Factory BBSs are on it. Get rid of them. Put something fun on.
Yeah. Make sure you got
Then
a good diff in there.
you get a hard top, because the absolute thing you realise is this soft top's a little bit wobbly in the midsection. So immediately I had the hard top anyway, but I kept the hard top on all the time to the point that it's now bolted on instead of having the latches, so it never comes off the car. So I've got a soft top that I never have the roof down on, basically. And
But
then you
that
start
goes-
tinkering with the engine, and they're just infinitely easy to work on. Like, if you're gonna cut your teeth working on a car, buy an MX5.
I've got to say on the hardtop thing though, this kind of proves the point that you made right at the start of the episode that it is the best entry level sports car there is.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people out there that go and buy them and they don't want them convertible and they'll permanently attach a hardtop to it and never take it off because it is the best handling sports car out there.
For the money.
For the money, yeah.
I mean,
and it's a big
I think
jump.
it would take the challenge off some more expensive machinery though.
You can
I
certainly
think
you can
you'd have
punch
to go
above
up-
your weight in an MX5.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you'd have to go up a bracket or so to get as much for your money. You spend $1,000 on a stock MX5 now, and it's going to handle great. You're going to have to spend 6, 7, 8 grand, maybe a BRZ. It's the next entry level, I'd say. Anyone else got?
Well,
You're not-
you say that because you look at all the people that do track-focused MX-5s, and with standard power, they can outmaneuver like Subarus and stuff like that on track because they just hold
600 brake Skyline that couldn't keep up.
that too.
That's
but
cool balls, though.
this shows you where it's a thing that slow car owners say that handling is everything. But if you can't put the power down, you're wasting it.
But it's not even necessarily about it being fast. There's a lot of much faster cars than it, like probably grip better, but they handle well. As in, you can go round a corner slowly, and it still felt really nice.
Yeah.
Like feels
Yeah.
right, even if you're not going quick. It just drives good.
Also, let's finish off this episode without talking about how rusty MX-5s are and complaining about rust.
That is a really important point that we've got to discuss, because we've kind of stuck the MX5 up on an altar, right, for the whole episode, and we've gone, they're brilliant, they're great fun. Do you know what you need to do every year religiously? Underseal your MX5.
Yeah.
I didn't. One year I didn't, and it had to be out all winter because
Reasons.
VW related reasons. And it was out in the salt and grit of a Sheffield winter. And now it's not left my workshop until I can afford for it to go to Painter Dave to be fixed and have a full respray.
Yeah. This is it. This is why
I've never undersealed mine, ever.
yours doesn't see the road though.
It did for a good 2-3 years, and then it
But
was
you looked
traded.
after it.
No, I didn't.
It
Suspension, ball joints, bushes, all that. Mechanical, it has had the best that I could afford.
It
Bodywork.
depends. It depends, because if yours was absolutely spotless inside, then it won't have rusted. If it had an inkling of rust, then it just spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, the second the drain hole gets blocked, the second you leave a bit of crud in the arch too long, like, you're having a bad time. You are having a bad time.
And I wouldn't say that was an MX-5 specific problem.
No,
The
that's a
drain hole
Japanese
getting
car
plugged.
specific problem.
The drain
Early
hole getting
90s.
plugged.
Yeah.
The drain hole getting plugged is an MX-5 problem because for some reason they decided to run the drain hole through the middle of the car. And then it fills up and then it leaks into the inside of sills and sloshes around inside. But the Japanese don't salt their roads, so they don't treat any of their cars because they don't need to.
Also, Bam, you say we've been putting MX5s up on a pedestal, right? I think what everybody needs to understand is that the MX5 is on a pedestal. Any MX5 owner will put it up on a pedestal. But that pedestal is made of like popsicle sticks and bits of string, and MX5 owners are really, really, really proud with their little trophy. And all of their family are really proud of the little trophy they made, because all of their family also drive MX5s. And anyone who hasn't owned an MX5 looks at the MX5 trophy and goes, wow, that's pathetic. But everybody who has, they know.
Yeah,
They know.
absolutely.
We all know it's a shit car, but it is such a good shit car.
It is the best shit box money can buy.
It really is.
And now and again, it's got some rare enough things in its family that if you're one of those people that buys to invest, like I think the first time I saw an MX5 go for more than a Mark 1, or is it a Mark 2? The RS Limited is a Mark 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's Mark.
Yeah. First time I saw a Mark 1 MX5 go for 15 grand was an RS Limited at an owners club rally with the carbon Kevlar seats in it still.
That's the thing. If you've got something to store it, an MX5 isn't a brilliant investment car to get now and cheap.
As long as it's one of the actual special editions and not one of the special editions that means diddly squat.
Yeah.
Well, being one of them.
But that order basically of desirability goes RS Limited, Chased White R Limited, because they only made 300. That's properly rare bit of metal. Then, because it's mechanically the same as those other two, the Satellite Blue Mika R Limited. And that's like where the collector's brains live.
There's the other... Or am I thinking the RS Limited, the black one with the red interior?
It's not black, it's
Is that
Satellite Blue.
No, there is
you
one.
might be thinking the S. Is it an S Special that's black?
Might be. I think
Red
that's
interior.
up there. I think that's still a bit.
Yeah, here's where you disappear down the rabbit hole of so many special editions.
I think that is.
The Le
I
Mans.
think that is one of the.
There you go. The Le Mans Special Edition. It's one of those. It's just one of those cars. If you've not had one, go out tomorrow and buy one.
And then even if you sell it a week later, you've said, I drove one, yes, they're cool, but it's not for me.
Yeah. But
Guarantee you won't sell it, but...
If you don't think they're a cool car, you are wrong.
There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to bear in mind as well is they've made 4 different variants of the MX5. The only one I haven't driven is a Mark III. But
that's not
one,
a Mazda,
2,
that's a Ford.
we're not going to get onto that topic because I want one for reasons.
They have made 3 different versions of the MX5 and one Ford in a pretty frock.
I'm going to buy one of them at some point, so for reasons. But all 4 of them all drive like an MX5.
Except for the Mark III.
Which
Everyone
drives like
says
a
that.
speedboat.
They're all MX5s and they all handle like MX5s.
It's the
Doesn't matter
R33
which
and the
years.
MX5.
They've been around for 30 years. They've made 1 million of them. And they're all MX5s. And no matter which mark you buy, it's still MX5 and you're still going to love it.
Except for the Mark III, Matt. You're going to lose, so...
You are. Should we just have a vote on this? Is the Mark III a boat? Yes.
Yes.
It also somehow is the smallest inside of them all. Like, if you sit in the passenger side of a Mark III and you're my height, you still feel like this.
But for all of the marks...
Isn't it the biggest, though, technically?
On the outside it is, and I think it's the heaviest, but only by about 100 kilos or so.
That's like a tenth of an MX5.
Yeah, because Drift Games are building one, and they weighed it, didn't they? And that was...
But everybody goes on about the Mark III being the heaviest car, like it's 1,600 kilos, but it's 100 kilos more.
Yeah, there's... And it's a modern... It's modern, it's got ABS and traction control and aircon.
Yeah, and everyone goes on about the purity of an MX5 and all the rest of it, and it's a good car.
You sound like Moog then.
It is genuinely a good car.
Yeah.
I've never driven one, so I can't comment.
I've never driven one. I've been out in a boosted one, and it still feels like an MX5.
They are nice as well. That's the thing. Mark III MX5's actually.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of people hate is it's got all the modern tech in it, and everyone who likes the Mark I and the Mark II don't like the modern tech. They hate on it having ABS and traction control and all the rest of it.
Electric windows, power steering, working
No.
radio, aircon, heaters that actually work. Do I need?
No. So took my aircon out of the R Limited.
Never had it.
I never had it in mine
Got
either.
power steering.
Never had it.
I threw that away.
I'm keeping that. That's not going anywhere.
Keep going.
Working stereo, definitely.
Never
I
had.
threw that
I
away.
took it out. Electric windows?
Yep.
No.
I kept mine.
One
No, I kept
functioning, one where one of the little guide wheels is cracked a bit and it can only go down about that much now.
Just a print one.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That is a solid play. Hadn't even thought
There's
of
already
that.
a thing for it on Thingiverse. I've checked.
Yeah. There is though.
My Windows
Yeah.
got to a stage now where my passenger one is held in by cable ties and it can't go up or down.
The,
Was
the
it like
only
that when I
reason
went out in it at Coventry?
Yes. Yes, because it was cable
That
tied up. But I had
explains
the roof
that
on.
explains a lot about my filming position in the passenger side of your car.
The only reason I kept my electric windows is so I could open both of them from the center of the car without having to lean over and wind one of them.
Yeah.
So the best description of a manual window I ever heard was keep fit windows.
Yep.
Yeah, mine are. I've got to the point now where I can do them while sideways.
So
Oh, I've got to put
basically,
my window up.
I think the summary of MX5s.
My window's still going up. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. Okay, you just keep winding while we do the summary of MX5s. And
Yeah.
round
It's
out
up
this
now.
episode. I think the summary of MX5s is don't cheap out on your parts.
Yep.
Underseal them.
Yeah.
Know that at some point a Mark 1 or a Mark 2 is going to rust. And save
Yes.
for that
Yeah.
day. And if you haven't got one, buy one tomorrow.
Parts are dirt cheap. Like,
Yeah.
you can buy
The
engines for
biggest-
100 quid.
The biggest thing I could say is don't worry about too much noise and stuff. It's probably fine. The amount of noises your car makes, and then you realise it's just an old car.
Oh yeah, they rattle.
go-
They rattle like no one's
Yeah,
business.
I
You go
think
from your
that
daily, and it's a modern, and it's got air, and it's well insulated, and it's got triple glazing glass or whatever, and it's comfortable. You don't notice the normal noises.
in an
Okay.
MX5 you can hear everything. I think the other thing to say about an MX5 is they're so simple to work on
Yeah.
that anybody could do it, and it's a perfect car to learn to work on your own
Yeah.
cars with. You don't need
So-
any specialist tools either.
And be
So
very,
really-
very proud of it, but understand that no one else will be proud of your MX5.
Unless
And
they
Apart
own
from
it.
other MX5 owners.
Yeah.
On that note, thanks everybody for joining us this week. Socials are running below, as always. Subscribe is off down that way. Hit that button if you want to see some more stuff and us chat some more breeze. And from me, Bam, that's goodbye. Matt,
Hey.
Bryn,
Goodbye.
Milton.
Doodles.